In the winter of 1986, a quiet Pennsylvanian duplex became the center of one of the most disturbing and controversial hauntings in American history. For years, the Smurl family reported relentless attacks, strange voices, violent disturbances, and encounters with something far more sinister than a simple ghost story. The case would go on to inspire books, documentaries, and eventually Hollywood itself. Many have heard a version of the Smurl story, but few have heard the truth from someone who was actually there. Someone who walked into that house long before the cameras did, long before the headlines came, and long before the world turned the Smurl's terror into its entertainment.
In the winter of 1986, I was 21 years old, in my last year of college at UConn, when my grandparents, Ed and Lorraine Warren, asked me to do something that would change my life forever. They needed someone to go into a house in West Pittston, Pennsylvania. A family was claiming they were being attacked by something demonic, violent and relentless, and dangerous. My grandparents couldn't get there right away, so they sent me. I was the first investigator to enter the Smurl home. I went in with a young friend from college who had no experience with the paranormal. And what I experienced that winter weekend, I've never forgotten it. Hey everyone, I'm Chris McKinnell. Ed and Lorraine Warren were my grandparents. And by 1986, I'd grown up around the work. I had heard the stories, seen the evidence, and helped to organize their files. But this was the first time I was going in to evaluate a case before my grandparents. One night, my phone rang. My grandfather's voice was serious. Chris, we need you to go to Pennsylvania as soon as possible. There's a family, the Smurls, and they're in real danger. We're trying to get there, but we need someone to assess the situation now. I asked him what to expect, and he told me, I don't know. That's why you're going. Now, I was worried. In my last big case, my grandfather had a heart attack while I assisted the Archbishop during an exorcism. I knew the stakes were high, perhaps deadly, but I also felt this sense of responsibility. This family was asking for help, and no one else was able to go. So I packed a bag, grabbed my tape recorder, and we drove through the snow to West Pittston. What wasn't said on the phone was that this family had lived under attack for almost 10 years. Early on, tools vanished, unexplained fires broke out, foul stenches filled the air. Even their dog was thrown against a wall. By 1986, the activity had turned violent and unrelenting. I arrived at 328 Chase Street, West Pittston, Pennsylvania, around 11 a.m. Saturday morning. It was a duplex. The Smurls lived on one side, Jack's parents on the other. The street was quiet, the trees were bare. It was a normal-looking neighborhood. But the moment Janet Smurl opened that door, I knew this wasn't going to be a normal weekend. She looked exhausted, frightened. Her husband Jack stood behind her, and I could see their daughters peeking around the corner. They were scared, but also almost numb, like they'd been living with terror for so long it had become routine. They didn't just say, "We hear noises." This family claimed they were being sexually assaulted by an invisible entity multiple times. He said he'd been thrown from his bed, choked and scratched. Their daughters reported seeing shadowy figures, hearing growling voices, feeling something touching them at night. One night, a ceiling light crashed down as their daughter Heather was preparing for her confirmation ceremony, and it injured her. Another one of their daughters was pushed down the stairs. Both Jack and Janet had even been levitated over their bed. This wasn't just a haunting. This was war. The family had tried everything. They had had priests come to bless the house. Nothing worked. In fact, after the blessings, the activity got worse. Now, I want to be clear about something. When someone tells you they're being assaulted, even if they say it was by something invisible, you don't dismiss them. You listen, you document, you take it seriously. So that's what I did. I had my tape recorder running. My grandfather had given it to me as a gift. I asked the family to go about their normal day while I observed and documented and tried to discern. My friend and I went over to meet Jack's parents first and started recording in their master bedroom. We immediately recorded the sound of grunting pigs, which the family had been reporting for quite a long time. Later that day, I went upstairs to Jack and Janet's bedroom by myself. I was trying to use my abilities to discern what we were dealing with. My grandmother had been helping me to hone my gifts, but I still wasn't comfortable with them. As I opened myself up to the energies in that room, it was very, very heavy, and the door slammed shut immediately. I jumped. Then I called on Padre Pio. He's the patron saint of our family. I may not be Christian any longer, but I do believe in the good Padre. As I was praying, the entire room filled with the scent of roses. It's a sure sign that he was present. The energy in the room immediately faded away. The next evening, I was walking up the stairs to join Janet and my friend. I started to become woozy when I reached the top of the stairs, and all of a sudden, I was floating backwards. Now, I don't know how long I was suspended in the air, but they grabbed me and pulled me in. I thought about Janet's daughter, who had been thrown down the stairs, and I wondered what would have happened to me. That night, as the family were asleep in their beds, my friend and I sat at the top of the stairs to keep an eye on everyone and make sure that they could have a restful night. The master bedroom door slowly closed, and my friend, understandably, became terrified. He asked what he should do, and I told him to just open the door, but he was too scared. At the time, I didn't have much compassion for that, and I will regret that forever. I just reached over him and I reopened the bedroom door. I called my grandparents the next morning and told them everything. My grandfather said, let them know that we'll be taking the case on and be there this week. He told me that he wanted me to return for a couple of weeks and gather as much data as possible. He needed it to convince the church to help. When Ed and Lorraine arrived a few days later, they brought cameras, recorders, and decades of experience facing unimaginable terrors. Within minutes of setting foot in the house, my grandfather said that he felt the temperature plunge, saw a dark mass float before him, and heard that pig grunt noise that we had heard. They interviewed the family extensively, documented the phenomena, and they finally concluded that this wasn't just a haunting. They believed that the Smurls were dealing with multiple entities that were inhuman or demonic. And the land itself seemed to be a focal point, exacerbated by this particular family. My grandparents performed blessings. They brought Bishop McKinnell in to spiritually cleanse the house and tried to work with the local church. The diocese eventually sent help, but even they admitted nothing unusual happened under their watch. A priest stayed in the home for 2 nights and reported nothing at all. It was actually the first peace the Smurls had known in ages. But here's the thing. The activity didn't stop. It calmed down for a few days, but then it came roaring back. The Smurls were trapped. They couldn't afford to move. They couldn't sell the house because everyone knew about the haunting. They were stuck living with this terror. And then the media found out. My grandfather had started using publicity as a way of forcing the church to act when they were hesitant. But once the story broke, it was everywhere. It was on the local news and national news. Reporters camped out on Chase Street. Neighbors were interviewed. And of course, skeptics came out of the woodwork. The family, they were torn apart by it. People accused them of making it up for attention, of being mentally ill, of exploiting the situation for money. There was no money nor any motive for this well-respected family to do this. They'd been a part of this community, but now their daughters were bullied at school and the community turned on them. This is what haunts me to this day. Not the poltergeist phenomena that we experience, but what happened to that family because they asked for help. My grandparents wrote a book about the case, which led to a TV movie in 1991 called The Haunted. And while those helped other families understand they weren't alone, it also meant the Smurls' story became public property. Their trauma was entertainment. That experience shaped everything about how I approach cases today. I will never publicly identify a family without their explicit, ongoing consent. And even then, I'm very hesitant about it. I will never share details that could expose them to ridicule or harm because I saw firsthand what media attention did to the Smurls. They asked for help with something terrifying, and instead of compassion, they got judgment. So how did it end? Honestly, it didn't end cleanly. After multiple attempts by the church and others, the phenomena diminished, but it didn't cease for quite a long time. It eventually decreased. Some believe the prayers and blessings accumulated and finally took effect. Others think the family learned to coexist with it, or that the entity simply moved on. The Smurls eventually moved away. They separated from the public eye, and they deserved that privacy. Subsequent tenants have never reported any phenomena whatsoever. What I learned from this case is that resolution doesn't always look like Hollywood endings. Sometimes it's just survival. Sometimes it's a family making it through to the other side, scarred but still standing. The Smurl case was messy, complicated, terrifying, and it taught me that this work isn't about proving ghosts or collecting evidence for the internet. It's about people who are suffering, people who need help. If you're experiencing something you can't explain, you're not alone, and you deserve to be heard without judgment. That's why I'm reopening the Warren files. Not to sensationalize, but to find truth and offer help through the Warren Legacy Foundation for Paranormal Research. I'm Chris McKinnell, and this is the Warren Files Reopened.
The Smurl case continues to stand as one of the most debated and disturbing hauntings ever investigated by the Warrens. It is not just because of the Hollywood dramatization, nor because of the sensational headlines. It was because, at its core, it was the story of a family looking for help and paying a heavy price for simply being believed. In this episode, we revisit the case, not to relive the fear, but to understand the truth. Here at the Warren Files, we will explore the cases investigated by Ed and Lorraine Warren and their grandson, Chris McKinnell, through the Warren Legacy Foundation that carries on their work throughout the world. To see more of our terrifying and informative videos, please like, share and subscribe to our channel. And whilst you do that, why not hit the bell so that you won't miss a single episode. Join us again next time as we travel to another home, another family helped by the Legacy Foundation on the Warren's Files Reopened.